Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bass, and today I've got another gear review for you. Everything from new rods to new baits. Let's go. I'm excited about this one. We've got a bunch of stuff to cover. Some of this is still carryover from the Bassmaster Classic. I told you guys in our last gear review, we couldn't possibly cover everything from the Classic in one video. So some of these are Classic releases. Some of this is just brand new stuff that's come to market. Some is things that have been out for a while, but we've been testing and putting them through the paces, and we're finally ready to put a stamp of approval on them. There's some really good stuff here. Let's start with the big items. Let's start with rods, and then we'll just jump into the rest of it. Kicking this thing off is these two rods right here. These are from Cashion. This is the Cashion Icon series, and it says right there on the blank, Bait Finesse System. You guys know that Tim and I love Bait Finesse, BFS, throwing micro-sized baits on bait casting gear. It just makes fishing more fun. We love doing it. We're getting more and more amped up, more and more into it as more and more products come to market that make it easier to do. So Cashion came out with this Icon series with the Bait Finesse rods in it. I don't know, it's been a while now, but we needed some time with them. We needed to test the rods, really put them through the paces, and I've got to tell you, I really like them. We've probably got, between brands now, 10 to 12 Bait Finesse rods that I really like. Some are very nichey, some do lots of things well, and that's where these two fall. These two fall into the do everything well category, and that's why I wanted to highlight them today, because we've been getting more and more messages from guys that are getting into Bait Finesse just like we are. You're getting really passionate about it, and they're like, hey, either they want a first rod or they want more rods, but either way we're getting messages like, hey, if I could only get one, which one do I get? Right? I don't want a rod for this and that and that and that. Give me one Bait Finesse rod to test the waters. Either one of these would be an excellent choice. This one, the one I've got rigged up today, the 7-foot light. That rod is rated 2 to 8 pound line. 2 pound line on a bait caster. Seriously, it's amazing. This one is the 6'10" medium light. So if you're going to try one of these, the 6'10" medium light is more of a do everything type rod. Like, it'll be able to set the hook on a 2.8 Kitech. It can set the hook on poppers, you know, like normal type baits, poppers, little worms, but you could also micro Texas rig on it. You could throw small crankbaits on it. You could do all sorts of things with it. That is a really neat rod. The 7-foot light is just that much more limber. I mean, look at that. These rods, again, if you've missed all of our Bait Finesse rods, I'm not going to go way down the rabbit hole right now, but if you've missed all of these videos we've done about Bait Finesse gear, the concept here is that you can do everything that you've ever done with spinning tackle can now be done on a bait caster. And it was actually this reel that made it happen. This is the Shimano Corrado BFS. Bait Finesse, or BFS, has been around for a very long time in Japan, but it was a very high-end deal. You had to spend a lot of money to get rods and reels that could do it. When Shimano brought over the Corrado BFS a couple of years ago, that changed everything for the US market, because now there was a very functional, affordable reel that allowed all of the Americans to jump into Bait Finesse without spending a fortune. And that has caused an eruption. Now you've got other reel manufacturers jumping in. You've got rod manufacturers building specific rods for this. Lots of new baits. all sorts of really fun stuff. And like this right here, this is, and actually we're gonna get to this in a minute, but check this out. This is the Jester shad. This is an owner Cultiva bait. This is actually rigged up on a super cool hook too. I wasn't even gonna talk about this, but see that hook right there? That's a Hayabusa 1/0. So like this fits perfectly for this little guy or a 2.8 Kitech. Wasn't even gonna talk about that hook, but it's just tied to this rod. We'll come back to this Swimbait here in a minute. But this is on the big end of Bait Finesse. I mean, you can go way, 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 way smaller and still send it with casting gear. This particular one, I've spooled up with 7-pound Daiwa fluoro. It's so much fun, so much fun. So anyway, again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. We have other videos about this style of fishing if you're not familiar. But this Icon series, these Bait Finesse rods, there's 2 of them, are both awesome. If you want an all-around, go 610. If you want to take it to the next level where it's even softer, even more fun, like that little Swimbait, I'm winding that thing. When I get bit, it's a reel down, full slam hook set, just as hard as I can on 7-pound fluoro. It's a ball. It makes bass this big feel like 3 to 5 pounders, and it's just fun. You can go out and catch dinks and have the time of your life. And if you happen to hook a big one, you are in for a wild ride. All right, let's jump into the rest of this. Next up, let's talk about this guy. A lure retriever. Look at this thing. First off, this is the toothy Fishman retrievers, okay? It's huge, right? I'm gonna show you guys something that I don't know that I've ever shown in a video. So, lure retrievers, when your lure gets stuck on the bottom, you take a lure retriever hooked to a line or a rope, and you send it down your line, and it bumps your bait free, and then you wind it back up. So crankbaits, everything from like jigs and worms to crankbaits to swim baits, but the larger the bait, the harder it is to knock it free. So I've always liked big lure retrievers, and there were no big ones on the market. So check this out. This is a custom retriever that my buddy Jared built for me years ago. This is what I have used forever to get my swim baits out. I'll bet this one retriever has saved me 10 grand in swim baits. And that's probably really light. It might have saved me 20 or 30 grand in swim baits. Because think about all the times that you get an expensive bait stuck, and instead of losing it, you just slide it down the line, bump it free, wind it up, unclip, and go again. There's been days where I've bumped swim baits out 10, 15, 20 times with this thing. But again, there was never a big enough retriever on the market that you could just buy. Always just like little tiny ones that work great for small baits, but they don't have enough mass to move a big bait, especially in deep water. So I had this one built, but check this out. Imagine my shock when I got on Tackle Warehouse and saw practically the same thing sitting there. I'm so excited. So I bought another one for me. I bought one for my wife. The other day I was walking by Tim's boat. Tim had bought them too. He saw the same thing I saw. They're awesome. Again, the concept is you take your line, you slide it through the 2 eyelets, and then you just let it free slide down the line. And right as it gets to your bait, because you keep your line tight with one hand, right as it gets to your bait, you slack it and it'll bump it free. If you're using treble hooks, you do that a few times. If it doesn't bump free, I just sit there and jiggle it, and then you tangle the chains into the trebles and you just pop them free. Worst case, you have to change out a treble hook, but you get your lure back. Huge cost savings. We get questions all the time from people that like watch us bottom hop liplesses. Springtime, hopping lipless on the bottom. When we're doing that, we get these questions all the time. I don't understand, how do you do that and not lose a lipless all the time? I mean, we do lose a few, but a lure retriever will get 98% of those back for you. Once you have the technique down, you know how to bump them loose. All right, there's no particular order here. We're just gonna work our way across the pile, all right? Next one up, from Nichols. Now, we have already reviewed the Nichols Catalyst spinnerbait before. It's a fantastic spinnerbait. I love Nichols spinnerbaits. I love spinnerbaits in general. I'm pretty fanatical about them. I really like Nichols. They do some awesome stuff with their spinnerbaits. When they brought the Catalyst, I was super excited because it's got a good keeper on it. And that was something lacking on a lot of the Nichols spinnerbaits. But they do plated heads, so chrome or gold plated heads. I really like the blade size. These baits fish extremely well. Again, I'm not here to even talk about the benefits of a Catalyst spinnerbait. We've already done that. It's a great spinnerbait. The reason I bring these two up is I noticed classic 3 new colors popped up. These two rock. And in a lot of places, we are just coming in to prime time shad spawn. Some places are done or already full tilt, but a lot of you, the shad spawn is happening now. Tactical shad. We love this color. It's my favorite color in swim jigs. We use this for a lot of different things, that tactical shad color. And then that one I believe is called Purple Haze. It's got that little bit of purple in it, but just killer options added to an already awesome spinnerbait just in time for that shad spawn. Early morning, shallow water, awesome spinnerbait bite. Next one. This little guy, we actually had this in the last gear review, but it wasn't supposed to be there. It was just tied on a rod, so I talked a little bit about it. So today I actually wanted to go into detail about it. This is from Rains. This is their little 2.5 inch ring craw. You see that guy? It's a little tiny craw bait. I think, I've got one tied on. This is a technique, again, going back to Bait Finesse. This is a technique I love to do on Bait Finesse this time of year, which is why I brought this bait back into another video. I love to micro Texas rig all during the spawn and then post spawn. As those fish stay shallow post spawn, some fish go out, some fish stay in. The fish that stay in, they're feeding, they're aggressive, they're right up tight, and in a lot of lakes, the grass hasn't grown up super thick yet. I love to do a little downsized micro Texas rig, 1/16 ounce weight, little tungsten weight, and then a little tiny, I've got a handful of different hooks I like. Little tiny hook in there. In this case, 6-pound fluorocarbon, and that little Rains craw. It's no secret that bass like to eat little crawdads. As a kid, I used to crawl around in the creeks all the time catching crawfish. Those little tiny green crawfish are awesome. I mean, they're little tiny compact guys, and we would take them and you'd throw them back into the hole and fish would just come up and smash them. They would always eat those little ones. So I guess that just stuck in my mind because as an adult, I love throwing those tiny little craw profiles. Now, this little Rains craw, it looks good on the bottom. I've spent a bunch of time with this bait. It stands up really well. As I work it, these claws have so much mass that they do like this slow follow behind the bait. So when the bait hits, it'll settle back down flat. They don't float. It'll settle down flat, but as I work it, they catch water. They're ribbed. They catch water and those claws will just sort of float up there and then they work their way back down. And the bait itself just has an awesome action. It's got a really unique scent to it. Unlike any other bait that I've fished with it, it almost has like a night crawler type smell to it. Like that earthworm, dirt smell to it. Totally different than other baits, but I've done really well with that little tiny downsized craw. Next up, we've got the Missile Magic Worm. Now, this came out in a 6-inch last year, but it just came out in a 4-inch, which is a killer little size. Whether you're going completely old school and you're throwing this on a split shot rig, or drop shotting with it, or throwing a micro little cross between a shaky head and a Ned rig. Just a great little size. Now, Missile partnered with RoboWorm when they did this launch initially. RoboWorm is pouring all of these colors, which was a really good move, because if you've paid attention at all in the last few decades, RoboWorm, I mean, they lead in multicolored pours. They do some really cool custom stuff that no one else does. So I think that was a really good move on Missile's part. And again, I think bringing a 4-inch was a very, very good move. If you like the Magic Worm already, if you like throwing little plastics, that small Magic Worm is a really cool option. This particular one, that Blueback Secret, is one of my favorite colors. All right, next one up from Hayabusa. This is called the Trailer Lock. Let me pop this guy open. This will save you a ton of time and money if you put it to use. I've seen things like this before, but this is the best done version I've seen. I'm gonna show it to you first on a Swimbait, which is the first time I saw it, that's what I thought of. But then when I started playing with it, I saw a whole second use. So we'll get to that in a minute. Hopefully you can see this. So this end is what you're going to put the hook through. And then the other end has these 2 prongs on it. What I'll do, here, I've got a beat up old Kitech that's already destroyed. I'm gonna put this on a Matt Allen Swimbait head. Now this bait's already been wrecked. It's caught a bunch of fish. It's had a good life. So if I pull on it, it's gonna wanna slide down. See that? It wants to give. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this trailer lock and I'm gonna poke the hook point through it, slide it down to the back, and then I'm gonna pinch the 2 little barbs and push them down into that bait and then let them open up inside the bait. Now it's inside there. Now when I tug on this thing, it's not coming off. See that? It will extend the life of your swim baits because it keeps them on longer. Baits that are already worn out, it will keep them on there, keep them in place much, much longer. Now, that was the first use that I saw for it. But after I started playing with this thing, I saw a whole nother use for it that I think is really cool. And this is why I want to bring it to your attention. Let's talk flipping, okay? A bait like a Reaction Innovation Sweet Beaver. I love these baits, catch countless fish on them, but I don't catch countless fish on one bait. This is a bait, you know, if you flip with them, if you're up there pitching around cover, they tear up quick. The heads tear up quick and they start sliding down the shank and you've got to get a brand new bait over and over and over. Check this out. So I'm gonna go through the nose just like I always do, pop out the side, slide that on up. Then behind that, ooh, we've got a big gust of wind coming here. Behind that, I'm gonna take that keeper, barbs down. I'm gonna let this gust of wind blow by. So we take our bait, we go barbs down on the keeper, put it on there, and I'm gonna run it all the way up to the top, okay? So put that bait on there as if it was tied on. I'm ready to do my Texas rig here. Let's get the bait set. All right, ready for a typical Texas rig. Now I slide this up the back, turn it over, squeeze the barbs, and push it into the back of that beaver. Now this beaver, look, let me unhook it from the bait so it's just on the head. I'm gonna start tugging on this thing. I'm gonna have to rip this beaver in half to get that thing to come down off of the nose of that hook. How wild is that? I mean, I'm yanking on this thing. Anybody who's ever flipped heavy cover just had the same light bulb go off that I had go off the first time I did that. The time savings, next level. You're talking about extending the life of a beaver, as an example, tenfold. That's awesome. And you can't see it at all. You can barely even see it back there on the backside. It's not in the way of your hookup whatsoever. I think it's awesome. Again, that's the Hayabusa trailer lock. And I'll link that in the video description, just like everything else. If you're not familiar with these buyer's guide, gear review, if you open the video description below this video, you might have to, depending on the device you're on, you might go down there and it's already open. You might have to hit more to get it to open up. You might have to hit the 3 little dots to get it to open up. But somewhere below this video is a whole description with links to every single one of these items. It'll include our favorite colors, favorite sizes, if there's relevant gear that you need to know about to rig it. All of that will be in there for you, so you don't have to take tedious notes and try and find this stuff. All right, next one up. This one, we're going budget, and then we're gonna go with a more expensive, higher end crankbait. This, if I don't lose it, Freedom Tackle just came out with what they called the Rad series, like a throwback to the 80s Rad series of baits. In that line, this is actually the most expensive in the series, but in the line, I think it is the standout bait. This is their Lipless in that Rad series, and I think it's a pretty cool bait, especially for the price. It's a very narrow body, and it has a it's a cross between like a tinny rattle and a glass rattle. So I'm gonna call that a subtle rattle for a Lipless. It doesn't have that deep knock like a one knocker, and it doesn't have that super high pitched rattle either. Somewhere in between. It's narrow bodied, but it tracks extremely well. It comes in 2 sizes. This is the larger one. To me, this almost fishes halfway between a traditional Lipless and a blade bait. Tighter action, fast moving, just a chuck and wind burner of a bait at a good affordable price. I think that's a really nice bait. They did a good job. That one, if I'm not mistaken, launched at the Classic. That's at least the first time that I saw it, and then it took some time to get my hands on it. But a very cool bait for just covering water, post spawn, over the top of grass flats, paralleling the ends of flats. I like a fast moving Lipless, and I think that's a really cool bait for the job. Next up, now on the higher end side of crankbaits, Spro came out with a completely new design, and it's been out for a little while, but again, it takes us time to play with these things. These are the Outsider cranks. This is the medium runner. This is the deep diver. There's also a shallow runner, but these are the 2 that are relevant right now. A lot of people overlook medium runners. I throw them a lot, but we're also headed into that deep diver time of year. Couple of really unique things about these baits. First off, the name gives it away. Outsider. The weight on this bait is external. All of the weight in the bait is right here. That causes it to dive at a really steep angle. Now, they say that you'll get over 20 out of this bait. I think you'd have to go to pretty light line to do that. Realistically, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there is where I'm seeing it get on the tackle that I like, actual crankbait gear, where I'm not going super light to get that extra depth. But a couple other things about this: comes with excellent hardware straight out of the pack, which is really cool when you don't have to upgrade anything. That adds a lot of cost to any crankbait. It's got good Gamakatsu split rings and really good Gamakatsu trebles on it straight out of the box. And then it's got some super unique colors. Like, can you see the abalone that's on the interior of that bait that's flashing through? I don't know if you can or not. But there's a bunch of really unique colors that Spro doesn't have in their other baits that they did with these Outsiders, and I think they're really awesome colors. The other thing that's a big deal is that this bait is completely silent. If I can hold all the hardware, there's nothing dead silent, and it's a tighter action than your typical large deep diver. So much more subtle than, you know, a 10XD or an Azuma or something like that. If your fish are pressured, if they see a lot of crankbaits, this is a really unique bait. It's a different action. It's no sound. It's some really cool colors they haven't seen. And again, you've got it in a couple of sizes for some different depths. I think that is a winner. Next one, let's talk about a little swim bait. A little, but not tiny, because these other ones, those are tiny swim baits. This is from Cultiva through owner. This is the Burrican Swimmer. Comes in a couple of sizes. This is the smaller. There's one that's an inch longer. But the reason I wanted to talk about these baits, I bought them the second I saw them. And then the smaller guy here, I put a little bit of time into, and it ran shallower than I expected. So it comes with a slot that you can push a nail weight into. So you can adjust the depth that this bait will, or how quickly this bait will sink. So you change your effective depth that you're fishing it. As soon as I saw the action, it's got a really cool, like really subtle body kick or body roll. And then it's got a good tail kick behind it, but it's a very stable bait. That body roll is very subtle. It's not one of these baits that's doing this thing at all. Super stable. And it's also super stable in current, which is cool. That's where it stood out for me. So when I first played with it, I fished it with no weight added at all. And I was like, right away, I'm like, I know what I want that bait for. I'm gonna keep it like that, completely weightless, but it's not for now. And I just put the bait away. This is the time of year I've been waiting for. As that grass starts popping up, these fish are super shallow. They're up on the flats, they're around cover. You can take this thing with no weight in it, and it weighs enough itself, because it's got a pretty heavy, I think it's got a pretty heavy salt content to it. When I fish this thing, I can send it, even weightless. But when I start retrieving, this bait is running like this close to the surface. I can run it over the top of dirt shallow grass. On Chickamauga, my home lake, where fish get crazy shallow up on the mud flats, I can throw it so far back in the shallows and just run that thing, and it's got that perfect swim right over the top of everything, so I'm not snagging it up way back up in the shallows. I think that's a really cool bait that I think a ton of people are overlooking. And then again, if you want it to fish like a more traditional bait, you could stick nail weights in it to set your depth. But a really cool bait. Comes standard with a good solid hook on it. It's got an owner in it. You don't have to change anything. And you can throw this on light line, like 10 to 12 pound line, and get bites when you're not getting bit on other stuff. I'm thinking smallmouth, spotted bass, slaying with this thing. And then again, largie fishing when they're pushing these flats. Early morning, those fish are dirt shallow. I can reach them with this thing and I can stay over the top of the cover. It's completely different than other baits in that category. All right, a couple more. This one from X Zone, the Stealth Invader. Super cool little bait. This is a little 3-inch Stealth Invader. Think goby, sculpin type profile. The detail work in this bait is awesome. Like the actual profile from the bottom is not too far off of their slammer drop shot, but the body is completely different. It's a true goby profile. So fat cheeks, it's got eyeballs on it, and then it's got these really cool little detailed fins all the way down the back. And then it's got a paddle tail, but the paddle tail is wrong side up from what you're used to seeing. The reason that you would do this, because I've played with little swim baits a lot, when you put that tail wrong side up, it's harder to convince a fisherman to throw it. So I have respect that they did it. But the advantage of it is that it will move at slower speed than than a tail flipped the other way. The way that water moves around the body of the bait, you'll get a good swim out of it, a good little paddle kick, even at super slow speeds, and especially if you drop shot it. When you go to lift that bait, you immediately get a good swim out of that tail. So you can kind of pull it up, let it fall, shake it a little bit, pull it up, and it'll swim up and then settle back down. So the packaging right on it there, it says drop shot, Ned rig, swim bait head. For me, swim bait head. Put it on like a 1/0 guppy and send that thing. But I absolutely see the benefits of drop shotting with this profile too. And in my opinion, that's why they did that tail, because that makes it much more universal, where you can fish it like a swim bait, but you can turn around and drop shot it effectively, and you'll get more movement out of it than you will a traditional swim bait with a tail that's flipped the other direction. And then again, super cool goby type profile. I mean, a northern guy should be paying attention to this bait for sure. And that brings us to our last one here. Get Net, which is not a brand I've ever heard of, but it's in collaboration with Cultiva, and again, that's through Owner in the US. I was on Tackle Warehouse right after the Classic, looking at all the new things that came out, and I saw these, and I did not see them at the Classic, but I immediately ordered a pile of them, because just looking at the pictures, I was like, oh, I think I know what that's gonna be. I want those. I ordered a bunch. I was right. So you saw that one earlier that I had rigged up actually on a Bait Finesse rod. That's the medium size, okay? That's their 3-inch. So their sizes are, let me look because I don't want to misquote it. See, which one do we have here? Okay, that's the 3.2. There's also a 4.2, and then there's the tiny guy, a 2.2. And it is, I got a great big gizzard shad just swam by the boat right there. The tiny guy is a 2.2. That is a phenomenal little bait that you're gonna throw on like a tiny little downsized Ned head and just swim that little swim bait, or you could drop shot with it on a tiny hook. But that 3-inch, the 3.2, right there, I've got it rigged weedless. It'll also do great on a guppy head or on our tactical underspin, any finesse underspin. And then I actually somewhere, yeah, here it is. This is the 4-inch, and that's on our tactical underspin there. But this bait, the reason why I grabbed them was as soon as I looked at the pictures, I was like, ooh, that's reminiscent of that Kitech Easy Shiner, which is a phenomenal bait when I fish northern waters, when I fish clear water. It's just a tighter action than the other Kitechs. And that tight action works really well in clear water. The problem is everybody throws it. So as soon as I saw these, I was like, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. Because there were a bunch of good colors. And it is, I've played with this a bunch now. It's thick in the back, thin in the belly, and it's got that super subtle action. It was exactly what I expected it to be. So it's got a little bit of rock, but overall it's very stable, and it's got that subtle little tail kick back there. If you throw the Easy Shiner a lot, so does everybody else, and you're looking for an alternative, this little guy, that Juster Shad, is a really cool option, and you will be the only guy, at least until your buddies see this video too, you'll be the only guy throwing that thing on your waters. And again, it comes in some really cool colors. Like that one is, what do they call that color? I have no idea what they call it because it's not in English, but to me, it looks like electric shad. That's what that looks like to me. And again, all of the sizes are super cool, but the 3.2 and the 4.2 are the ones that I thought were the more universal sizes. And with that, we are going to wrap up this gear review. So again, I'll link all of these different baits the rods, all the gear down in the video description. I'll give you my personal favorite colors for every one of them. So if you're like, yeah, I think I want to try that out, I don't know which color to get, you'll at least know which ones I think are the best colors. Yeah, should all be there in the video description. I don't think I missed anything. I think we got it all covered. I love doing these videos. You guys know that. This is one of my favorite things to do. I'm a tackle junkie at heart. This gives me an excuse to buy all the new stuff that I can find and then go out and spend time with it on the water. Some of it, I see it online and I already know I'm gonna like it, and I get out and confirm that. Other things, we put them to the test. We work them, we catch a pile of fish on them, we make sure they don't break. You know, one thing I want to add, actually, I'm glad I picked this back up. This Cashion rod, American built rods, limited lifetime warranty. If I'm not mistaken, it's an $89 replacement for a lifetime. That's awesome. I mean, if you're trying to decide, is that a rod I want to try? That's pretty phenomenal. So again, I totally forgot about that before, but again, this is one of those things that we tested, really put through the paces. I've had these rods for a while. I've fished them hard and I really like them. And then, you know, things like this retriever, that one hasn't even been in the water yet. My other one is already getting thrashed. They're great. All right, guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.